You're all pumped up. What's going on here?
They'll be out.
A hole in one or something?
We can't even complain to Frank because Frank's
I
here.
got my pen in my car, so I had to run back. I didn't want to be late.
All right,
so I'm out
Diane's
of breath,
not gonna
you
be
know.
here,
She's not gonna be here, so I would call it
Guess you didn't take the elevator. Enjoy the ride.
No,
Sorry.
thank you kindly.
5:30 exactly.
Oop, oh, jeez, you just started.
All right, so let's call the Board of Public Works to session on Thursday, September 20th. Would the director please call the roll?
Mayor Jonchus,
I'm here.
Commissioner Ackerman,
I am here.
Commissioner Pappas,
Here.
Commissioner Moriarty,
Here.
Commissioner Teets.
Present.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Any discussion? Commissioner Pappas.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just had a question as to what's amended because I usually mark up my other
Good
one.
question. So the only thing that has been added is an informational under Park and Recreation
Okay.
regarding the planting of a permanent tree at the Hunt Building.
Okay, perfect.
And there will be a non-public session at the end.
Right, we have one, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Moriarty, did you?
That was
That's what you were
my
gonna-
question. I was going to discuss that, right.
Anything further? All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Is there a motion on the minutes?
So moved.
Is there discussion? This would be you're moving July 26th, right? July 26th? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Is there a motion on the minutes of August 23rd?
Move to approve the minutes of the Board of Public Works meeting of August 23rd, 2018.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those minutes are approved. And is there a motion on the minutes of September 6th? The
I'll move
meeting
to-
of September 6th?
I'll move to approve the minutes of the Board of Public Works special meeting of September 6, 2018.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and the motion passes. We now have the public comment. Is there any member of the public who would like to address the Board of Public Works on any subject? Yes. Just come up to the microphone right here. And first, just for the record, please introduce yourself.
My
and,
name is Peter Schaefer. I live at 15 E Street. That's near the bridge going over to Hollis, on East Hollis Street.
Yeah,
Just wanted to make you aware of something. You probably will eventually anyway. But I live on East Street is right on East Hollis that goes across the bridge. And that part of the East Hollis Street has been pretty bad over the years. And every year people have been filling stuff in and so on. Next year, the intersection is going to be redone next year, because I think there's been a recommendation. I'm not sure how far it's gone, but I'm pretty sure that whole area is going to get redone. One of the reasons that part of the street hasn't been done lately and just been patched is because there apparently, as I'm told, there are a lot of cobblestones underneath that part of the street, and it's not fully cobblestone, so over time things keep shifting, cobblestones keep shifting, and therefore the road keeps opening up. So last year, we spent, I think, 6 months dealing with that, and we ended up getting it patched. And that's because, it needs to be done better, I was told, but we'll just patch it for now because that's all we can do. Next year, when they're going to do this, they are, I think, going to do this part of the road with that contract for that intersection. What I was concerned about is making sure that they know, because I think it's done with different money, and they're doing estimates right now what it would cost to do that. And I'm not so sure that they know exactly what's underneath there and what has to be done. And the reason I'm up here today is just to make sure that DPW and the folks with that contract and whatnot get together and make sure they understand what actually needs to be done, because I don't want to end up in a situation where every year again we have to patch it again. So that's all I really have for you.
and are
Thank
you
you.
talking about East Hollis or,
It's East Hollis Street, but it's by the alphabet streets,
yeah?
yeah,
Okay.
along that stretch, because that opens up every year. It's open up right now where trucks hit it and the houses shake. So every year we try to get it, last year we tried to get more done than that, but we were told there isn't any money, we gotta find money, and it's extensive, it's not just a matter of repaving. And I think you know about that, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else from the public wish to address the board? If not, we'll go on to engineering, item A. And is Mr. Dukran here? I don't know.
He is not. The deputy director, deputy city engineer is here to,
Oh, okay.
but I think Mr., I think prior to Peter speaking, I think Mr. Maynard's here to
All right,
speak.
but usually we do the motion and then we start to
Yes.
discuss. So is there a motion with respect to item A?
I move to approve a hardship request from Lacasse Homes LLC to excavate for installation of a sewer main extension and water and sewer services for a proposed house at 12 Birch Brow Road.
And does Mr. Maynard wish to address this issue?
No, if you're moving approval, I'm fine.
Well, I think it would be helpful if you
Okay.
were to explain the reason for the,
For the record, Richard Maynard, professional engineer with Maynard and Paquette of Nashville, representing Lacasse Homes. Mr. Lacasse bought the last lot on Birch Brow Road, last empty lot. The sewer doesn't go that far, it just goes up to the intersection, and it needs to be extended, the mainline sewer in the street, as just shown on you should have got a drawing. And it has to be extended to the front of the lot so we can get sewer service. We also need to extend water service up the street too. There's a 40-foot section of recently paved portion of Birch Brow, and really around the intersection with the adjacent street, that we need to interrupt, so to extend the sewer. It's a 40-foot section. As it says in my letter, we propose to mill it down and full repave that whole entire new section, to put it back in place, give you an extra couple of years anyway, and be as good as it is today or better, so.
okay. Any questions for Mr. Maynard? Commissioner Pappas?
Well, I guess it's just,
Kind of got your hand half raised. so-
right, no, I mean, it's more of a comment.
Okay,
And I have actually done a lot of reading on that, and every time you cut into a road, no matter how you pave it, it's not the road itself, it's a sub-road underneath. It decreases the life of the road. And in Manchester, they have very stringent, the same stringent patching requirements that we do. But they also have a fine in place for, or a fine is not the right word, a fee. I have done a lot of reading regarding a court case, and there was an expert. Regardless, the road is never in the same shape. After you cut into it, it's not the road itself, you're right, will be in okay shape, it's the road underneath. And hardships are supposed to be hardships, and this, again, this isn't directed at Mr. Maynard. I do tend to have, I'm pretty consistent in my view on a hardship, and I feel as if just when someone purchases a property, they should know the rules in place, and other than not wanting to wait the time, I really don't see a hardship. I think a lot of us probably know former Alderman Dean, and he's someone I have a lot of respect for. He has a way of putting words that I can't repeat them the same way he does. So I'm going to paraphrase something he said, and this was in regards to both paving and also some land use issues, and that's that there's a difference between hardship and needing to squeeze the last possible dime out of a piece of property. And I think that we've really erred, this board has really erred in just, pretty much granting hardships. And we also have yet to put into place new fees that I think will probably help lower the amount of applications we get for this. And as I've told an attorney that frequently comes here, it's nothing personal. I just feel very strongly that the Board of Aldermen and this board have asked the citizens of Nashua to bond paving. And we have a very aggressive paving project, and it's gonna take a lot of years to pay off. And I think that we're doing a disservice to the taxpayers to continue to cut into roads. I really like our 5-year moratorium, and, you know, as I said, it's nothing personal against the applicant, it's nothing personal like, against the individual speaking. I've made a stand, and I'm gonna continue to make a stand, because I do think that it does a disservice to the taxpayers to have to continue to have damage done to roads that they've recently paved. That being said, I do recognize it's a really small area. I did read the material, I looked at the drawings. So it is nothing personal against the applicant, it's nothing personal against Mr. Maynard, but I will be voting no for those reasons.
Should I respond?
Yes.
In case you don't realize, I've been at this for almost my entire life because my father was a city engineer before I became an engineer. I don't take any of this personal. I know this very well. I don't understand what you read necessarily with people who cut into roads and don't repair them properly. The main problem is when the trench is not consolidated and compacted. As it's gone up, they just throw the dirt in it and it ends up settling over time. And that's partially the problem. I don't want to blame it, but some of the inspectors don't enforce that rule on some of the contractors. The other thing I would like to point out is this sewer line, when it was installed in Birchbrow, should have gone all the way to the end of the street and should have serviced all the lots and not left this lot out. And whether it's my client who wants to build a house or the person whom he bought it wanted to build a house, which was part of the case. They've been looking to build too. They're looking for a builder. And it's just not because this is a buildable lot of record. It's been paying full taxes for years. In fact, probably 40 years of taxes. So the city's got the benefit of all those taxes as a building lot, not as a vacant land off in the woods someplace. This is a fully assessed, valued lot. So to deny them access to public sewer and public water is definitely a hardship when they've been paying taxes all these years, far more than the cost to the city of opening this trench for 40 feet. Far more the amount of taxes that people pay on these lots that are going for 100, 120,000 a piece for 30, 40 years here. So if the job is done properly, this is a low-traffic road. It's the dead end. There's hardly any traffic, because maybe there's 3 houses up there that'll traffic this road. It will not deteriorate if it's done properly. It's not the case done otherwise. So this is a clear hardship to deny somebody access to public utilities. Thank you.
I think the director has a question.
Mr. Maynard, should the board grant this, you will restore the trench according to the city's specifications,
For sure.
correct? Okay, thank you.
Now, the letter says that you submitted, our client is prepared to mill and pavement overlay the 40 LF section of relatively new pavement. What is 40 LF new section?
40 linear feet, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. LF stands for linear feet.
And is that in width or in length?
No, that's in length in the street, and then the full width of the street. That's the length along the center line of the
So
street.
you're basically repaving the whole street?
The whole section, in it, yeah, that's, it's
from-
not the whole street from front to back, but that's the whole section that was paved a couple of years ago.
But the whole section that you would be disturbing would
Yes.
be repaved
Full width.
from edge to edge?
Yes, full width, correct.
Any other questions or discussion? Commissioner Tease?
Mr. Maynard, I was wondering, what type of home or what size home will be built on the lot?
It's a single-family home, probably about 1,400 square feet with a one-car garage. It's really a moderate income type home.
Great. I think that's much needed in the community, and I would.
As being in the
gladly
business, I will definitely tell you that's
support- Yeah, and I'll,
exceedingly needed in this community.
if we vote, I would vote in favor.
Yeah.
Commissioner Pappas?
I was just gonna say that I did read a good portion of the expert testimony from the court case, and the person did have a PhD. And the reason the city of Concord and the city of Manchester presided is that when you do cut into a road, I'm glad that we have the very stringent requirements we have. And, you know, as I said, nevertheless, it's nothing personal against anyone, but I feel it's a disservice to the taxpayer who have had to do a lot of paving in the city. So, thank you.
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes, Mr. Maynard, I agree with your comment about this, it should have been there already. You know, why they stopped before that, I don't know why, but cost, I guess. I was just curious about the ordinance, I thought said 20 feet beyond I don't know what the ordinance says. Does it not require 20 feet beyond where you're working to repave?
Yeah, that's usually with regard to trenches and their width, but,
I just want to make sure you've incorporated that.
yeah.
So you're in compliance with the ordinance.
Correct.
20 feet beyond
Yes.
where you're working is also part of the
Yeah,
pavement.
we'll be going beyond the recent pavement section to further down the street too, so, but specific permission I needed from you guys, from this board is to, because it was recently paved, I had to get that specific permission from you. Everything else is essentially approved by a review of the engineering department.
Anyone else?
I would make one more point.
Yes.
The 5-year moratorium is somewhat arbitrary. Why isn't it 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? Roads are supposed to be good for 20 to 30 years, so why this community picked 5 years, I have no idea. It's not the end of the world, but why isn't it a couple of years? 5, to me, is somewhat excessive, too, in that regard.
Now, I believe the legal department is looking into the issue of an ordinance that would impose a fee in.
I think they're looking at a bond. So somebody would,
Degradation fees.
yes,
Yeah, so they're considering
yes, that the,
Makes sense.
a bond would impose to cover if anything goes wrong over a period of time.
Okay.
Previously, it was talk forever, but then they have to have a time period on it, too, so.
All right, so the motion is to approve the waiver as requested. Is there any further discussion from any of the commissioners? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
And the motion passes and the
Thank you,
waiver is
folks.
granted. Item B,
I move to approve the residential and commercial wastewater service permit and fees as submitted.
any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes.
I'll move to approve the purchase of manhole and catch basin castings from E.J. Prescott, Inc. of Concord, New Hampshire, in the amount of $110,120. Funding will be through Department 169 wastewater fund, wastewater activity source structures.
Discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item D,
Move to approve change order number 2 to the construction contract for the 2018 CIPP lining with Lane Inliner of Fairfield, Maine, in the amount of $50,995.0. Funding will be through Department 169 wastewater fund, wastewater activity sewer rehab.
discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item E,
I'll move to approve change order number 1 to the asphalt testing contract for the 2018 asphalt testing with SW Cole of Londonderry, New Hampshire, in the amount of $27,581. Funding will be through Department 161 Fund Street Fund General Activity Paving, Department 161 Street Fund Trust, account category 54 Property Services.
and this will be for testing at the site of the asphalt plant
Yes. and-
Correct.
And on site.
and on site both. Any discussion? Questions? Commissioner Pappas?
Just, do you have, any feedback from how it's working this year?
Good. So far, we've had good results, so hopefully that will continue. But Newport's doing a good job, so we're happy with the quality of work that they're doing.
Thank you.
Was,
Commissioner Ackerman?
thank you, Mr.
Sorry.
Mayor. Back in May, when the pre-bid meeting occurred, was this piece of the puzzle in terms of this testing the hot mix, was this not determined at that time? Why
This is for the additional, for the federal paving.
for the federal, okay.
Yes, so you had approved some testing for, previously for just the regular program. These are for the federally funded streets.
Okay, and an example of a federally funded street?
Amherst, Somerset Parkway, Broad Street, and Kinsley.
Thank you, okay,
So these are the repurposed funds from the Broad Street
From the,
Parkway,
right,
understood.
doing the major streets.
Okay,
so this would be the testing for those streets.
and we'll probably get that all done this year, right? No, that was rhetorical, I apologize. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item E,
Move to approve the use of northeast $25,000 and northwest $10,000 sidewalk quadrant funds, together with infrastructure capital $5,000 for order number 2 in the amount of $40,000 to the contract with Leighton A. White of Milford, New Hampshire for the FY18 sidewalk program. Funding will be through Department 160 Admin Engineering Fund Trust and General Activity Infrastructure Improvements.
discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Motion passes. We're now on to Parks and Recreation. Item A.
I make a motion to approve the purchase of playground equipment through the U.S. Communities Government Purchasing Alliance contract number 201-700-1135 from Compan Incorporated of Tacoma, Washington, in the amount of $15,846. Funding for this purchase will be through Department 177 Parks Rec Fund General and Trust, account category 71 equipment.
Now, Mr. Caggiano is here for anyone who has any questions. Any questions or comments? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item B.
I'll move to approve the purchase of seasonal boat dock and kayak launch from Easy Dock of Hudson, New Hampshire, in the amount of $13,908.76. Funding for the purchase will be through Department 177 Parks and Recreation Fund Trust, account category 71 equipment.
Discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Now, we have an informational item, which, thank you, which I think Mr. Caggiano is going to cover for us, having to do with the holiday tree at the Hunt Building.
Good afternoon. Nick Caggiano, Parks and Rec Superintendent. Every year, as everyone knows, we find a tree and we go through a pretty laborious task of moving it. We have to pay for cranes, setting it, and then putting all the ornaments on. It's a fun time, but one of the things we've discussed for a few years now, both with the director and the crews, is why don't we put a permanent tree there and save that time and expense, and then we'd have more time to do other decorating that we're always doing at the last minute. So as we searched through the years, we found a 30-foot white fir at the top of Roby Park by the sledding hill. We planted it back in 2002 when we redid the park. And we did some research, and there's a gentleman, Green Pro over in Hudson, that can move it for about $3,500. We would spade it out, bring it over, spade it right in. It'd have to be staked for a few years just to maintain it. That lawn's already irrigated, so it would get water, so the survival rate is going to be very high. And then we would replant and replace the tree at Roby, just so we don't lose one. At the hunt, we may need to prune up one big linden tree that's there just to make sure it fits really nice. And we've done some talking. We've talked to Mr. Shea with the Great American Downtown. He was very supportive. We talked to Community Development Director, or Economic Development Director, Mr. Cummings. He was on board. Ward 8 Alderman Melizzi Golia, because Roby Park's in her ward. She was on board with it. We still want to talk to the Hunt Board of Trustees, and I'm going to pop in at a Downtown Improvement Committee meeting and just run it by them. But I think it's a good idea. The crews found the tree, so they're kind of motivated to do this, and that's, I think, what we're going to plan to do. Yes, sir.
I think that's wonderful and great buy-in by everybody involved. I'm wondering, my kids particularly like going by, seeing the nice lit tree. Is it possible to consider having that tree lit with white lights outside of the holiday season to help bring some attention to the Hunt Building, just as an icon of the downtown?
That's certainly possible. What I would do for that is, right now we run a wire from the Hunt Building over. If we're going to permanently light that at different times of the year, I would probably trench an underground conduit, and that way just have the box right at the base of the tree, so we wouldn't have to have a wire guide wire.
Trench from where? Where would it have to come from?
It would, the corner of the Hunt is where we plug the tree in every year, and it just goes up the building, and then there's an eye hook, and we have a cable that goes to the tree, and it's overhead, so you'd see it. So if we're going to do this permanently, I'd go down, put a conduit in the ground, and pop it up right by the base of the tree. Makes a little more sense. But sure, the light selection has always been something that the Stroll Committee, they went to multicolored.
Well, I'm thinking
for the
multicolored during
holiday.
the holiday and white during the rest of the year.
Yeah, it's easy to do. It's not that difficult, and now with the LED lighting, it's fairly inexpensive for the power requirements.
Commissioner Moriarty.
Yeah, Superintendent, yeah, I'm also in favor of your plan. I think it's great concept. The question I had was, that area, that greenscape, is that considered a city park, and is that under our jurisdiction, or is that?
It's one of those shared spaces. So the Hunt trustees are kind of in charge of the building, and we've always maintained the outside grounds as part of Duchesne's Oval and Railroad Square.
To answer your question, Commissioner, no, that the Hunt Building is not under the jurisdiction of Public Works.
Right.
Roby Park is, but certainly, but not the Hunt Building. We just
It's
help
like
them
many
by-
of our properties that
help them by maintaining it.
some of our parks are on school property, so it's just a hodgepodge of, I don't think there was ever a need to, because it was all the city, legally, like, do parcels. So it's all one parcel when you click on it.
Commissioner Ackerman.
Thank you. Just a quick question. It's probably in our budget, and I overlooked it. What is our typical cost of doing that other type of thing, of bringing a tree?
Crane service is at least, is gonna be a half a day, so you're looking at about $600 for the crane, plus the bucket truck,
Man hours?
plus
so
the man hours of the guys. So by the time we're said and done, it's probably a $1,500 to $2,000 to do this every year.
Okay, great. And is if, assuming this gets approved, because I like it as well, is this something that you're going to try to do between now and the fall?
That's our plan, to do it between now and the stroll.
Excellent, thank you.
Any further discussion?
Thank you.
All those in favor of the proposal, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And
Thank you.
board, approves and encourages you to proceed with the plan.
Mayor,
Commissioner
yeah,
Moriarty?
before the superintendent leaves, just a question. The cell towers at Mine Falls, one's almost empty or is empty. What is the status on that?
So,
Want me to
cell
answer
tower
that?
manager,
Want me to answer that one?
sure, there's a
okay.
contract dispute.
All right, so there's, everything has been moved, and the city attorney can correct me if I'm wrong here, but everything has been moved but one occupant of the old tower. And they still have some years left on their lease. They've been encouraged to move over to the new tower and sign a new lease, but they refused to do so. And because we have the old lease in place, we don't have the contractual right to just force them to move. So the plan is to, continue to encourage them to move, but allow the second tower, they want money, whatever, they want to allow them to stay there until, they either decide to move or their lease runs out, and then we take the old tower down. Is that a fair summary?
I have hopes. We're in ongoing discussions.
So maybe come up to the microphone. They want money to make the switch, don't they? Don't they want something?
Well, they don't want to pay their share for the new tower, which was originally built by Verizon Wireless, with the caveat that other people who go on were going to have to pay an initial fee to reimburse the outlay that Verizon Wireless incurred. US Cellular doesn't want to do that. We've gone back and forth a few times. They dig in their heels and say no, but then they come back because they really do want to move. They just want to move as cheaply as possible. So we could see some movement.
Doesn't our deal with Verizon suggest that we need to collect this money from them?
Yeah, if we
So-
don't get it from them, we're going to end up paying it.
Yeah, so they want us to pay for them to move, right? We're not going to do
Yeah,
that.
But also,
Commissioner Moriarty?
thank you, Mayor. But also under the contract, Verizon will take the old one down,
yes,
regardless of 5 years, 10 years, 1 year.
that's my interpretation.
Okay.
And when does their lease on the old tower run out?
It's another 4 or 5 years, but they don't want to wait that long either, so that's what we've got going for us.
Thank you.
Anything else from Park Rec? If not, we'll go to the Street Department. Item A.
I'll move to approve the purchase of winter road salt from Granite State Minerals of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and Eastern Minerals of Chelsea, Mass. in the amount of $455,000. Funding will be through Department 161 Streets Fund General Account Classification 61 Supplies and Materials.
Discussion?
Yes.
Commissioner Moriarty?
Superintendent Iber, with the road salt, and now with our new program starting with the brine, are we hoping we are going to use less road salt going forward?
That's correct. We have yet to see how it's going to work out on our behalf, but the figures that they throw at us in the conferences they predict a 30% savings. So anywhere there would be great.
So we'll be looking at a lower number next year.
Probably the same number, but more salt, if that makes sense.
No.
Same budgeted number, but we'll be able to get more out of the salt, is what I mean.
Well, we're going to be using 30% less salt,
Yeah.
so why will we fund us the same amount?
we'll have to see.
I'm just throwing
We'll have
that
to
out
see.
as a
Yeah, yeah.
hypothesis.
Yeah.
Okay.
If we use less, we'll budget less, I suppose. Be a better answer.
Yes, that's the idea.
Okay,
So
thank you.
hopefully- I think the superintendent's a little gun shy to make any commitments, because we just,
Right.
this is such a new program, but yes, that is the plan. That's why we went with the brine program, to be able to reduce our salt consumption.
And because we think it'll, in the end, be more effective.
Yes.
To,
Yes.
in terms of ice removal.
Yes.
Any other questions, discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We're on to wastewater. Item A,
I'll make a motion to approve the user warrants as presented.
discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Item B,
Move to approve the purchase of a Class 1 service, or is that Class I? Class 1? Class 1. Thank you. Service for the 3 Turblex blowers to BCV Systems of Springfield, Missouri, in the amount of $28,496.0. Funding will be through Department 169 Wastewater Fund, Wastewater Account Classification 55, Other Services.
discussion? Questions? Now, Mr. Boucher is here if anybody does have questions on any of these items. But if not on this one, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item C,
I'll move to approve change order number 1 to the 3-year contract with Casella Organics of Concord, New Hampshire for the management of wastewater biosolids in the amount of $260,000. Funding will be through Department 169 Wastewater Fund, Wastewater Account Classification 54, Property Services.
discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item D,
I move to approve the contract with Paxor Construction of Merrimack, New Hampshire in the amount of $136,154.86 for the purchase, installation, or repair of 21 doors at the wastewater treatment facility. Funding will be through Department 169 Wastewater Fund, Wastewater Account Classification 81, Major Capital Outlay Improvements.
discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item E,
I'll make a motion to approve the 3-year contract between the City of Nashua and Excel Recycling for the recycling of scrap metal at the wastewater treatment facility. Revenue generated through this contract will be directed to Department 169 Wastewater Fund, Wastewater Account Classification 45, Miscellaneous Revenue.
discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We're now at administration, and under that category, we have the director's report.
Here, but it looks like it's been I had a May director's report up there a minute ago, so I was a little concerned. We found something. Okay. Okay, so we've done some levee maintenance, as you can see here. The pictures on the left of the levee before the trees and vegetation were removed, and on the right, after the levee work was completed. We've done some sign installations. These are through the Safe Routes to School program. They were installed about 2 weeks ago on Dublin Ave. One is on 83, the other on 26. These installations came about after the community was concerned about speeding and student safety on this busy stretch of road. This is trench restoration for a new gas line on Concord Street. Many of you are probably very familiar with this.
Right, I mean, that literally, you look left and that's my house.
Yeah. Thank goodness that's completed. So, speaking of Concord Street, we do have an update on the paving schedule. There's no question that this will be an inconvenience, but it'll be wonderful once it's completed. We will be doing some night milling on September 23rd and 24th from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. So Concord Street will be closed during those times. It'll only be for 2 nights. We're going to do one half of Concord Street, both sides, one night, and then both sides the second night. So that's the 23rd and the 24th. The 25th and the 26th, we're expecting to put binder on the street. We will be doing any jackhammering and everything, adjusting of structures will all be done during the day, so that shouldn't be too big a nuisance. And the final top course is expected. Now again, there are weather conditions and other factors could delay this a little bit, but the plan is to have the final top course on October 10th and 11th, and pavement markings the 14th and 19th. So, and I can send this to you if anybody's interested, especially those of you who live in.
Now, since 2 of the commissioners live in
People
close
have been
proximity to this project,
Three of them.
3 of the yes, right, 3 of them.
Ackerman was smarty.
Yeah. 3 of them, sorry, plus the chair.
Right.
Maybe you should explain why night work instead of daytime?
Sure. So originally, we wanted to mill during the day, and actually the plan would have been to close Concord Street. When in talking to discussions with the paving contractor, they said that we have to close Concord Street for 4 days in order to be able to do that, and we just didn't think that was an option. Especially trying to reroute the people on the east side of Concord Street is a little trickier than the folks on the west side, who of course could use Manchester Street. So we decided that this is going to be an inconvenience, there's no question, but we felt like this would be less painful than trying to close Concord Street for 4 days. So, and the milling is so deep that there's just no way that we could keep traffic while we do the milling. So.
And I would love to have that so I can let people know, but I'm wondering, I know it's a pain in the neck to do it, but if we can get that phone call so that people know in advance, who is it, Mr. Cates runs that, is it
Code Red?
emergency management?
Yes. We will,
If
and
you can
more
do it by
actually,
the
Lauren
address.
Byers will send out the notification through Code Red as well.
Because that might be helpful for people to know,
Yep, no, that's
and they
a
can
very
get
good point.
white noise machines in advance.
Mhm. We'll do that, and we are posting it all over Facebook.
Okay.
We'll have message boards and everything indicating.
Director, will they the signage is usually pretty good. Will they be also having the flashing lights up there that says paving going to be such a milling, the road closed the next day or two?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Our message board signs,
Yes.
yes, we will have those.
Because those people, I don't want them to be driving in on their cell phones on Facebook. I think it's more appropriate.
Absolutely. Yes, we will.
And the paving will be from Orange Street to Henry Burke Highway?
From what, from?
Orange Street
Orange.
to Henry Burke.
And then the one question I had, I think I've asked before, but who's gonna, is part of the paving bond to fix, I know we've got some expensive crosswalks there?
Yes, so actually, that is the responsibility of Liberty. They're the ones that cut into the crosswalk, so they are responsible for restoring them.
Okay,
And they will be after the paving's completed.
okay, so maybe in the spring?
It would probably be
Yeah.
spring at this point.
Any other discussion? Oh, well, sorry, we're still on the report.
Yeah.
Um,
So Kinsley Street is another street that
It's a
has,
big one,
people have been very interested in.
very interested.
And there's been so much work.
Awful.
There's been gas work, sewer work. Pennachuck is now going in. They'll be, if they're not in next week, I think this week, next week, for sure. They will be done. There's also work that needs to be done, given that this is now, we're using the repurposed Broad Street Parkway funds. We have to do all of the tip downs on Kinsley Street, which is a real challenge, because we didn't want to take any right-of-way. So we've had to be very creative on how we design these sidewalk ramps. Some of them will look a little Might look a little strange, but we got it done. So Newport's is going in and doing all of that work. So all of the utility work and the sidewalk work will be done by the end of October, and our plan is, weather permitting, to start milling the first week of November and get Kinsley paved. Now, if it snows and the weather doesn't cooperate, we might have some problems, but we're hoping and we're pretty confident that will get done. Sharon Ave, again, we had some problems with that, especially with all of the rain. You probably heard that it was we ended up having to close it. It is open, and we are still doing some night work. So September 21st, we're gonna be doing the binder, and then the last week of September, we plan to do the top course, and that will include the new right turn.
And
that we had
September
discussed.
21 is tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Yes, tomorrow. So,
And we're gonna add a lane, a right turn lane, right?
we're adding the right turn lane, yes.
So people heading south on Sharon, when they get to Pine Hill Road, will be able to
Take-
make a right turn without waiting for the people who need to make a left. A
So that'll be a
convenience,
big improvement.
yes.
Okay. So, don't hold me to all of this, but this, this is at least the plan. There are a lot of people that have been working really hard to try to make this happen, including the utilities who were really working hard with us. We removed a tree at Court Street. There's a plan, I think, to have Mayor probably can speak to this, to have some artists, I think, in kind of an artist studio, and so we removed a tree to try to level it off a little bit and put in a walkway to make it a little more usable. I just wanted to mention that the Mine Falls Gatehouse, we do have tours every time we have trail days. The last tour date was on July 9th. So a gentleman by the name of Doug Price brought pickleball to Nashua, and so we dedicated the pickleball courts to Mr. Price, and about 60 people showed up, so that was pretty cool. Stella Stadium is back in full swing. Very busy schedule there. We've done a lot of sinkhole repairs. This is the sinkhole that I think everybody's familiar with on Main Street at the intersection of Lake. And again, we're paving everywhere. This happens to be a picture of the intersection of Will and Simon Street. So there was a portion of Will Street that we weren't sure, actually, that the city owned, but we do, and so we went and we overlaid it. It needs to be really rebuilt, but it's a lot better than it was, and it'll at least hold up until we can get to it. This is some under drain installation on Brickyard Lane, which is part of the paving program. We just received, we're just talking about our message boards, we just received our new message boards, which will be put to good use. We're really actually excited to place them strategically throughout the city this winter to notify of snow emergencies and other weather conditions, so I think that'll help. And these are just some infrastructure repairs. Northeastern Boulevard on the left and Lodgeco Drive on the right. The sidewalk and repairs that we've been doing, we've had a lot of sidewalk repair work this year. This is at 86 Alt. It's been a very busy season also for emergency sewer repairs. This one is at the intersection of Northeastern Boulevard and Bowman Lane. This is a paving project we helped the school out with in the parking lot at Middle Dunstable. We're working on our brine program. Everything's getting set up. We will be ready to implement the program this winter. We're really excited about this. We've been training staff and getting everybody on board, and the feedback's been very positive, and everybody's ready to go. There's a Public Works Memorial that's being built at DOT, and It is a tribute to all those who have died in the line of duty as public works employees. It's really nice to see public works staff being recognized, especially those who lost their lives. We just lost another Park and Rec employee in Melrose. We actually sent a truck down to be in the funeral procession, and we have, Nashua and other communities have helped contribute to this Public Works Memorial to get it built, so. The street department has sent a couple of crews, so, and they said that they've never worked so hard, right, when they went? This is just wastewater, doing some monthly inspections of emergency eye wash and shower stations. Odor system control repairs for the control tower and press room. Some gravity belt thickeners, routine maintenance. This is a mechanic greasing them through the grease points of the gravity belt thickeners. The wet weather facility tends to, I clicked too fast here, but the wet weather facility continues to be a bit of a challenge. We got about 30 million gallons to our facility on Tuesday, which we should have gotten more, but we've really come down to the fact that we have issues with our screens and bar racks. We're just not able to remove enough material, so the screens are getting clogged. So we have Wright Pierce looking at that right now and advising us on new screens and new racks so that we can make that work more efficiently. It's been a real challenge trying to figure out what we need to do to that facility because it runs so infrequently, and we can't, it's not like something we can test, you know, we can only really watch it when it's in operation. So we've come to that conclusion now, and we're working towards a solution.
Is DES been pretty cooperative, or did they kind of get on you?
That's something that we should probably, they've been fairly supportive. You know, I think both DES and EPA, I think, would have preferred that we went down the separation route rather than the CSO route. I think we have a pretty good CSO program, and I think once we get our wet weather facility running the way it should operate, I think that we'll be able to show that we weren't down the right path.
Because
At least I'm hopeful.
I don't even want to think about having all these roads paved and then having to separate the rest of the
Yeah,
sewer.
well, I don't think we'll have to do that. I think if anything, we'll have to separate where we're having,
Okay.
we continue to have CSO discharges, but I know. This is our new excavator at the solid waste department that we received. We want to remind people as you're closing your pools to please make sure you don't throw pool chemicals in the trash, because it'll start fires both in the trucks and in the landfill, so please don't do that. Same thing with any fires in fire pits, ashes, please don't put those in the trash, because even though it appears that there are no hot coals, there usually are some, so please don't put any of that in the trash. And our curbside collection is actually coming to an end. The last date to request a pickup is October 19th, and collections will end on Friday, October 26th. And our next hazardous waste collection date is Saturday, October 6th. That will be at the street department garage from 8 to noon. And then the last will be November 3rd, so there is still one more. But the next one is Saturday, October 6th from 8 to noon. This is a reminder that the Four Hills landfill will be closed on Monday, October 8th in observance of Columbus Day, so curbside pickup will be delayed by one day for that week. That's it. Any questions?
All right, next we have commissioners' comments. Commissioner Tease.
Mr. Mayor, might I engage both you and the director on a few topics that I think will go quickly? And then I'd like to also engage a peer as well. I had a question with respect, I've asked the question before, these motions that we're voting on. It's my understanding that majority of them are perhaps already pre-approved as part of the budget. Is it possible for us to notify, in parentheses, previously approved or something, so we know when we look at it, if it's already been approved within the budget or if it's something new? Because in my mind, if it was pre-approved, I'm comfortable with the thought process and in the superintendent's saying, hey, we need this. It just would help me as I look through all these things. Or are they all previously approved through the budget?
Well, they all reflect an appropriation for the purpose outlined in the item. In other words, each particular contract is not,
Understood.
set forth in the budget, but if we're approving a contract for asphalt testing, well, of course, that's a federal fund thing, but, to approve manhole and catch basin castings, that's been approved as part of the bond issue, that the the $7.5 million per year, that's within that figure, so that is bonded and appropriated money.
So we're simply approving the vendor by which we're doing business?
Right.
Okay. And any time that,
We don't have the authority to approve something that's beyond the budget.
understood. Okay, so each time we have anything here, it's, the money's already appropriated as with whom we're doing business?
Right.
Understood. Thank you. Number two, I give full credit to my wife. She asked me to ask this question. What is the protocol for, some of the sewers seem to be really backed up. Now, obviously Tuesday was a torrential, I think it was Tuesday, a lot of rain. But is there routine maintenance to clean out those sewers to take in that water?
In other words, flushing out sewer lines, or is that what you're asking, or are you talking about catch
Wastewater,
basins,
waste-
culvert?
I don't know the difference.
Okay.
I don't know where she saw it, but for instance, I know, Greeley Park's a bad example because there's no catch basin there, but it just seems like there's a lot of puddling. I know when I come out of Cotton Road onto Amherst Street, there's always a big puddle there, and it seems like the drain is plugged up.
Right, so we are working on what's called the CMOM program right now that will address the cleaning. We have 8,000 catch basins in the city. So do we clean them all? No. We don't have, we don't have the resources to
Yeah.
do that. But eventually, we will have a program in place that will clean them every so many years. We do, when we do regular maintenance though, in areas where we typically have flooding or we have drainage issues, we absolutely do. And we do clean culverts. For instance, when we knew the rainfall was coming, we went out and started clearing catch basins in areas that
Got
we
it.
knew we could have potential issues. And then that day, of course, we were out in full force, addressing any issues. Because we know where our hot spots are, so to speak. But we are working on, the CMOM program will help us we'll be cammering all the lines, all our sewer lines. So we'll have a better sense of where our sewers are failing and we'll have to put a plan in place to update those that we need to update. We'll do some lining, but we'll also have a plan, as I said, for cleaning the catch basins as well.
Glad to hear it, glad to hear it. Thanks for
Yeah.
that update. I just have a few other items, and, because I wanted to speak, I really respect the opinions and perspectives of all the commissioners, and something that Commissioner Pappas said earlier kind of said, all right, I need to ask these questions. I don't necessarily have the knowledge the other commissioners have, but out of curiosity, approximately, how many miles of road, and I know there's lane miles, or what do we-
306?
And we're paving how many of them?
About 30.
Well, with the crack sealing, we're going up to over 50.
Yeah.
Right, but
Paving.
paving 30 at a cost of, is it 10 million,
11 million,
11 million?
11 and a half.
And then how many of those miles have been eaten into by utility work? Granted, we're doing it before the paving, but how many miles of potentially paved roads are being worked on by utilities in advance of the final paving?
I don't have
At
that
least
off the top
one,
of my head,
because
but
Concord
but
Street,
many,
right?
many of them.
Yeah.
Many of them,
So,
many of them. I
My-
would say most. I
Um,
have some utility work.
So, when Commissioner Pappas was speaking earlier about, I think it was Lacasse Homes and their hardship request, it got me thinking about, all right, they're gonna go in and dig a trench that's 2 feet wide, I'm guessing like they did in front of my house for the gas and the water lines. How is what they're doing any different to what Lacasse is doing any different to what the utilities are doing now? Right? It's basically the same type of work, is that right?
They're doing it in advance of our paving, so that's the difference.
Okay. And how, I'm just curious to know, I guess, and maybe Commissioner Pappas can help me understand it, how going in and replacing or putting in sewer lines negatively impacts the road around it? Is it because, like Mr. Maynard said, it's potentially not compacted properly? Is that the biggest issue? Because here's where I'm going with it. I'm wondering, the utility work that's being done on potentially 11 miles of paved road, we're allowing the utilities to go in, we're hopeful that they're gonna compact it properly, then we're gonna put $11 million worth of pavement down. I'm presuming that Lacasse Builders and anybody else is gonna compact it properly.
Well, do you want me to take us just a stab at it quick? So the difference is that the road that they wanted to cut in the Lacasse
Was already
homes
paved.
had already been final paved. So whenever you cut into a road, you're going to undermine the integrity of a newly paved road,
Of just the pavement,
of the pavement, correct.
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty stringent repair requirement, but nonetheless, you're still definitely undermining the integrity of that road when you're going in after it's final paved. That's why we're working so hard with the utilities to get in there before we final pave. And that's when you'll see, you saw on Concord Street already, that they went in and they still had to meet the requirements. You probably thought, well, why are they having to do that? Well, that's because you want to make sure that those trenches, when you final pave, that the final pavement is not undermined by those trenches.
So you remember that
Understand?
in
That makes
on
sense?
Concord Street,
Absolutely does.
Okay.
on Concord Street and before that Amherst, last year Amherst, inside the highway. Initially, there's a trench that is about this wide, couple of feet.
That's
right?
8 feet wide.
And that's kind of what appears to be a quote repair. But then, over the last number of weeks, the gas company, Liberty, who's doing the work, or is making the new connections and all, went back and now ground down the pavement to 4 feet at least of each side of the 2-foot trench. So there's at least, now it becomes a 10-foot wide repair, because the 2-foot thing is just temporary while they wait to finish the work. Then they come in and they do this entire 10-foot wide repair that goes way beyond the edge of the trench. And that is much higher quality and is required by ordinance than simply filling the trench and putting asphalt on top.
So what Mr. Lacasse was proposing, if I understood it correctly, was he was gonna redo the whole street?
The whole width of the
The
street.
whole width?
Yeah, for the length plus that he was working.
So isn't that better than having 2.5-year-old pavement?
There still would be that cut. There's
There's
still
still
a
a
cut.
cut, though.
There's still a cut across
Got
the
it.
width of the street at the end of where they stopped working.
Okay, so the integrity of the.
But it's a
down
pretty
deep-
good repair. with
Okay.
it. I mean, they're proposing something very thorough.
Got it, thank you.
Kinsley Street, I mean, part of the delay is gonna be, you see right there, on Kinsley, they still have the 2-foot wide trench, right? And the repair, but they still have to go back and do the 10-foot wide or 12, whatever it is they're doing, as they did on Concord Street. That still has to be done by Liberty on Kinsley before we pave. So there's still quite a bit of work to be done, and that's why we may get a November paving rather than right now.
Got it. Thank you very much, I appreciate it, it's helpful.
Commissioner Pappas?
It's been
Is
a
that
while
all
since-
correct?
Yes,
It's-
you're correct.
Commissioner Pappas?
It's been a while since I read the material, but what happened was that the city of Manchester and Concord were being sued by, I think, Liberty Utility, I think it was the gas company. And because they made them repair the road like we make them repair the road, and then they also had a fee. And it went all the way to the New Hampshire Supreme Court. So the stuff I looked at, my understanding is it's not really when you cut into it, you can repair the top part of the pavement. It's the area underneath that really gets undermined when you cut in. And I will tell you, parts of our city, you look like Swiss cheese from where you get new water pipes, and then half of the road is compacted, and then half of it isn't. And you especially notice it in the winter, and I know we're kind of, I understand we can't make Pennachuck pay to repave the whole road, but if you ever notice some streets where they have done the compaction on one side and the other side isn't, it really wrecks the road, and in some areas, our roads look like Swiss cheese because of it. It's not a good situation.
So we're going to allow the utilities who do this professionally to impact 11 miles of road, and then we're going to put $11 million of tar on top.
30 miles,
I'm sorry?
30 miles.
With
And we didn't really estimate the number of miles. under
30
which-
miles, yeah, but it's some function. So what I'm not understanding is, if other contractors are saying they're gonna make the same improvements, in this case, Lacasse is gonna pave the entire thing, is the integrity of the street worse than Concord Street, where the utilities are making these trenches and repaving?
Yes, it is, because it's already been final paved, and now you're cutting into a final paved street. So you're gonna have seams where water can get into the
Got it.
street, and, right. So what we're telling utilities is, look, there's gonna be a 5-year moratorium on these streets. Get in here, get your work done, so that, you don't have to restore the streets. But we still make them restore it to the same standards, even though we'll be paving. There's just not, they just, yeah,
Thank you,
they're just getting,
thank you.
the work.
Commissioner Ackerman.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question. Mr. Maynard, when he spoke to us in public comment, he made a reference about the compaction of the substrate, if you will. And I know that for the asphalt, we have a third-party company coming in to do the compaction and the testing of the asphalt. When it comes to the integrity of the substrate, do we have a third party, or do we rely on our own engineering department to make sure that they've done the compaction correctly?
You mean for a base of a road?
Yes.
Well, yeah, that's an issue. Certainly, we're not rebuilding every road that we're paving. Some of them have a better base than others. Pine Hill Road is a good example. That was a cow path at one time. The base of that road is terrible.
I think he's asking a different question. I think he's asking when the repair gets done, who inspects to make sure that
We can't,
repair is
we
done
can't.
properly? Is it city employees or is it third party?
Third party.
What are you talking about, though? The sub-base though, right?
The
So,
compaction.
so let's say in Concord Street or Kinsley, when they do their final repair, someone is inspecting that to see if it meets city requirements.
Yes.
And who is
Yes.
doing that inspection?
Well, we have inspectors. All our engineers are on all of the jobs.
We have city employee inspectors, correct?
We do.
Okay.
And so we either have an inspector, or an engineer, or somebody from, HSI looking at all the roads.
Which is our
And then we have, and then we have Cole doing, testing of the asphalt.
Because if I heard him correctly, he made a comment that said some inspectors don't necessarily hold certain contractors to
The
certain
right
standards.
standards is what he said. yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what he referenced. Do you find that to be an accurate statement, or?
No, I'd say that's inaccurate.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anyone else? Commissioner Moriarty?
Commissioner, Commissioner comments. First of all, I'd like to thank Superintendent Boucher for your monthly CSO report. I appreciate that very much, that work that you put into that. Be looking forward for next month for those numbers. Mayor, I'd like to congratulate you and your staff for your AAA bond rating. That
Thank you.
is significant. It really shows very
We
good.
all have contributed to that.
Well, it helps.
Not only, it's,
Yeah.
all of our boards, commissions, everybody
Right.
is working on the city budget, all of our city employees, spending the money effectively. Now, we also got, a few months ago, 9th best run city in the United States by Wallet Hub, and that was comparing the quality of service versus the cost, and they ranked us 9th in the United States. Again, this is due to the work of many, many people who deliver quality services at a very efficient cost.
And I think
So
Public
thank you for your
Works- Public Works was
congratulations, but-
acknowledged, weren't they?
I think they were, and so, yes, I suppose to some degree, the mayor contributes, but so do all of the other people involved, all the employees, the financial people, public works commissioners, and others who ensure that we deliver quality. The school board, everyone, deliver quality services at a very efficient cost.
Well, congratulations. I think it's great.
So
to
we're
everybody.
congratulating ourselves, which we deserve. Yes.
Lastly, if Commissioner Tease, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot.
Depends.
A couple meetings ago, I think it was, you mentioned that the concept of maybe getting together with contractors regarding Burke Street to see what can happen there. I was just wondering, has that gone any further, or where we are with that?
Wasn't as tough a question as I thought. Thank you. So Commissioner Moriarty is referring to the conversation we had here, I think 3 or 4 months ago, regarding investigating Burke Street. And my pitch at that meeting was, does it make sense to go down there with more than one contractor and more than one specialist, get a few different roof people in there, and have a lunch, have the superintendents there, walk through the building, and see if we can't have these contractors help us find a more efficient use of that building as opposed to $50 million. It was not necessarily endorsing, hey, let's run to Burke Street, but did it make sense to look at it? The director, over the last month, or was it 2 weeks ago, we had the walkthrough. I fortunately had the opportunity back in March to see the facilities, except for Nick Caggiano's office, which I know well anyway. But I think, certainly we could do better for our employees. And that tour for me was very eye-opening. And we have not moved forward on that concept. I think the ball is probably in my court to speak with the director to move forward. But kind of to my point of my email after our meeting of September 5th or 6th, I would enjoy having a session, whether it's one of our regularly scheduled meetings or otherwise, in concert with the superintendents to kind of learn what the strategy is for the public works and what's on their minds, and work collectively to develop some sort of a strategic plan. Is it to go in and make improvements where needed in the physical plant? Is it to combine different areas? Is it to investigate Burke Street? I don't know the answer, but I do know the answer probably lies, or proposed answer lies within the folks that are generally inside this room. So I don't know if that's what prompted that question or not tonight, but that's what I would like to see done, is some sort of open discussion with stakeholders, namely the superintendents, the director, and this board, to kind of discuss the strategy, particularly from a physical plant standpoint.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if I answered your question, but thank you.
Commissioner Pappas.
Last month was a vacation month. I know that the chair wasn't here. So I have a different view. I know that we got the $52 million, and I think that those were really good plans set up by an engineering firm, architectural firm. So it was a jaw-dropping price. So my view would be, first off, and I know we just got our triple bond rating, and I don't want to rain on people's parade, but I think as far as our buildings go, we've got a fire aim ready approach. I think that's kind of how we get stuck with Burke Street. I particularly voted no because we didn't have enough information on the building. And I think sometimes we get stuck with some white elephants, and I think that, certainly Riverside is one of those white elephants. Now, the Parks and Rec building, that probably should have been dealt with in the 70s. It's absolutely in deplorable condition. And it's, you know, certainly it's not the fault of any employees there. So my view would be, I fully agree with getting a long-term plan. So my view is, we have the $52 million, that's if we do everything to Burke Street. And I think that we didn't do a lot of homework on that, like as far as traffic impact and that sort of thing. So my proposal would be, I have no idea the cost of it, and looks like we probably used up our, all the extra money we had left over. I certainly am not complaining about the trash trucks that we got, because that certainly will be put to good use. I would suggest that during the next budgeting session, because my guess is that the cost would be pretty big, would it be to get an engineering group, that, maybe the same one that we had do Burke Street, and have them go through our buildings. These are the strengths, these are the weaknesses. You know, I'm certainly no engineer off the top of my head. I think that certainly Parks and Rec looks the worst. And the superintendent's gonna say, this is what's wrong with my facility, this is what I absolutely can't live without. And then to say, you know what, that's my dream world. Then you can say, but we can do without this, this, and this once we get prices. So that we're able to compare to. Given the, really our lack of, and I think that's just more, it's more citywide, and it's just the stuff gets put to the bottom of the list. I think coming up with really a maintenance program for our buildings. I think that what we've done with our trucks has been very good. I did complain about the process a little bit, I did squawk, but when I was first on the board, our trucks were breaking down all the time. And I do, even though I didn't like the process of how they came up with that replacement program, I think it's done wonders for the division, and I just
Can I ask you a question? When did you come on? When was it?
10 years
10
ago.
years ago.
10?
10 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So that would be my approach, is just so that we can compare the two. And clearly, this is going to be very long-term. Unfortunately, and I think the former mayor was the only one on our board who voted for the Broad Street Parkway. And I recognize that people think it's a good plan, but I recognize also how much bonding that's taken up for the city. But I think that we do a really good job at putting ourselves at the bottom of the list of things to be done. And I really think that we should get a figure of what it's gonna cost, and you know, through the years, how are we gonna do this? And I guess, you know, for the mayor and to people, however we're coming up with our buildings, it's not working. Is it capital improvements that Parks and Rec building has been on for years and years and years? And they just keep saying, no, we're just not gonna fund that. Well, that doesn't work. And, you know, during the summer, they do have public restrooms, but during the winter, when people are inside a lot, to have, you know, I mean, one restroom in buildings that would probably be deemed uninhabitable, we have workspaces in. So, but I would like to try to find a longer term and a more efficient way to pay for it, rather than, or maybe Burke Street is the way to go, but I would like for us to take the same approach to our current buildings that we did for Burke Street, so that we can compare apples to apples. So that's been my thought.
Commissioner Tease.
Commissioner Pappas, you said out of the gate that you have a different perspective than I, but I gotta say, I think this might be the first time that we're on the exact same page. 'Cause I think you
The
said-
long-term plan,
So I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that's 2 votes to have some sort of strategic planning session, Mr. Mayor.
But I think that we've done I feel like we've beaten Burke Street with a dead horse at the moment. We have the answer to that. And I guess I've been trying to be polite, because I know that sometimes I can be snippy and short.
No.
But, that being said, I think to get, to get contractors to find a cheaper way to do Burke Street, then in 15 years ago, say, oh, that was what were those people thinking? And I would like us to be a model for how the city should handle our buildings. And I think trying to get just a cheaper way, just to get it done at Burke Street is not the way to go. And I think
No one said anything
That's-
about a cheaper way.
But anyway, that would be my perspective, is to get a different perspective from Burke Street, but that's me. Thank you.
Any other commissioners' comments? Commissioner Ackerman?
Thank you. I thought the special meeting we had about the facilities was eye-awakening. It definitely demonstrated that there's some shortcomings, and I think we need to have this 1, 2, 3, 4, and a long-term plan. But my other comment was this. 2 years ago in May, and then this past year ago, May, we made an agreement, or a year-to-year agreement, that we would make a green space around the courthouse downtown Nashua. I didn't hear that come up in our recent May, June meetings at all. Is that still going to be the way that we're going to proceed moving forward? And if it becomes a green space, who takes care of it? Parks and Rec, or if it's still a street, does the street take care of it? I was just curious, because isn't there some construction being done down at the
Well, I think
courthouse?
what we did was we approved the closing of one of the part of one of the loops on the, what would that be, the northeast corner,
Right.
to demonstrate that we really don't need all of that pavement out there to make the traffic move. And I think the closure was successful, because I think we've proven we don't need that, and there's been a kind of a small little park in there, and occasionally people use it. More recently, you've seen some stripes painted, which do make the area more pedestrian friendly. That was done particularly at the request of some of the people at Clock Tower. And there have been a few comments about it, and maybe some adjustments can be made. I think most persuasive are a couple having to do with the east side of the Oval, fronting on where High Street comes in and Pearl Street. There's some parking spaces along there, which have been painted and now have Public Works little, what do you call those things? Those triangular things that sit on the ground. I don't know. They're not cones, they're made out of wood, but in any event, little structures that block those parking spaces. Number one, the bus stop is having trouble there because of those parking spaces. And number two, the trucks going into National Wallpaper that have to make that right turn also are having difficulty because of those 2 or 3 parking spaces. So we probably should remove those. They're blocked now anyway. But you did ask a bigger question. I think what we're hoping to do longer term is to find a use for that whole oval that would, develop the site in a way that it would ultimately be kind of brought back into the block pattern of downtown. Because the oval, this kind of LA massive traffic circle, which really is not necessary to move the traffic, is very sort of pedestrian and person unfriendly. And as we get more downtown residents, that becomes more important. And number two, if we bring that back into the block structure, it will be a much bigger development site. Problem is finding someone to do that. Who would take the chance of doing something there? I mean, I think eventually we will get that, but so far we have not. Does that somewhat answer your question?
It does. I just didn't know if the agreement to continue to keep it a green space needed to come before our board year over year until we move
I
forward.
don't know, did we approve it for a temporary
For one-
period?
we
or
did.
1 year to 1 year.
Well, we probably should come back with it. I mean, we could even think about closing another section. You know, you could do more there.
Sure.
But, you know, it hasn't, I think we've proven that you don't need all that pavement. On the
Right.
other hand, you know, have we found a developer to do something very positive with that space? And the answer is not yet. The owner is trying to lease the building that's there, even that hasn't worked. But, you know, there are various possibilities. Penachuk has looked at it. Other people have looked at it. So, you know, I think eventually something will happen. But you're saying maybe we should bring that back before the board, and maybe you're right.
Well, only because I recall that it
Yeah,
was supposed to be
right.
a year-on-year approval or
Yeah.
some sort. One last question, and this was information that was shared with us, and I don't know if it was in this meeting or a strategic meeting. Wasn't there, Tim, the Community Development Director, presented a proposal of maybe changing some streets to one-way to
Yes.
increase some, is that something that's gonna still in top conversation?
Yes.
Okay.
So the idea there, and it would affect the area we're talking about, is that right now, Pearl Street heads west, and Factory Temple head east, basically, and that's a one-way pair that goes all the way from the Oval out to where the senior center is, you know, where Temple and Pearl meet. Because of the initiation, the opening of the Broad Street Parkway, there are now people who come down the Broad Street Parkway, turn onto Central, and want to head to Main, and cannot do that directly because Pearl Street comes west right at them, right? So they have to begin to go around the Oval and make a right on High or Factory to get to Main. So the idea has been to reverse Pearl. The potential idea is to reverse Pearl so that you could drive directly from Central along Pearl to Main, and then also to reverse the Factory Temple to make that west. So there would be the one-way pair would be different than it is now. Costs about $500,000. There's some objection. There's certainly support for that downtown, but there's some objection. So what it takes is first a $500,000 appropriation, as well as just the decision to move forward with it. Because there's been some objections to it downtown, that's a little bit of a disincentive. I'd say the majority, though, is for it, and probably it's something we should, move forward with.
Okay.
But as you think about it, while we're doing that, maybe we should take a look at Pearl Street. Should that be redesigned in any way? The sidewalks are a little old. What do we want to do? So we have money. Haven't we appropriated money to have someone look at Pearl Street in terms of design? Was that in the escrows? I forget. Anyway, we may need some money to have someone look at Pearl, just, what should we do with this? It could be a very picturesque street, and we want to make sure that we completely, if we're going to be rebuilding it, that we do something that will really upgrade the whole neighborhood and can retain its kind of, I'd say, very pedestrian, kind of a comfortable feel. Because I think West Pearl has is good now, but it has a lot of even greater potential. So, there's some, there's a little complication to the whole.
The only feedback I heard was that many businesses didn't want to lose parking spaces downtown.
Well, it's clear that if you were to go Pearl Street West, you could not, you could not make it two ways, because especially between Elm and the Oval, because there's just not enough space to do two ways in that section without taking parking off the street. So that would have to be one-way west. Now, some people have suggested maybe Elm to Main could be two ways, maybe, for various reasons, without losing parking. But that would have to be decided and, executed one way or the other.
Thank you.
Yes.
So I wasn't going to ask any questions during Commissioner comments, but since Commissioner Ackerman asked about that area, I did want to point out, I did get I got a concern about traffic not being able to go through that area. Quite honestly, I never figured out how to use that little oval myself. So I just wanted to make sure that we will get that yearly approval. And then the other, if we can have a couple of months heads up, because I told this individual that I would let them know when it's going to be on our agenda. And if we could have the traffic engineer, there's got to be a pro and a con to having it closed. I'm sure that we were presented with the pros with closing it, and there must be some cons. So if we just kind of give both sides. As I said, I never used that thing. I could never figure out how to use that little oval myself. But that was just a concern that was expressed to me that I just thought I'd pass on.
I think that Director Cummings wants to give an update on the potential of the East Hollis Street projects. And so maybe at the same time, I could ask him to give us an
Okay,
update on.
if we could have heads up. But also,
Sorry,
as I said, I think to have both sides presented, if we'd have our traffic engineer here, because I know that Director Cummings probably has a planning background, but I think having a traffic person would be really helpful to try to get both, just to try to get both sides presented, that's all. Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else?
Mayor, just
Mario.
moving forward, from all the conversations we've had, it does appear that we probably should have some kind of special meeting to go over the structures, what we're gonna do in the future. We also talking about recycling. We haven't had that meeting, so there's things that we have to start to schedule some special meetings, in my opinion.
Yes. Now, we did have a meeting on September 6th to begin to talk about the buildings. But I think the department was beginning to develop some priorities, and certainly we should have another discussion on that subject.
Thank you.
Okay.
I mean, we did talk, we talked about kind of the condition of the structures on September 6th, about how we might proceed, what might be most important, and then there was a tour of the various buildings to view their condition, and there's a lot that aren't that great. So, yes, certainly we need to get into that further.
Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, is there a motion to unseal the non-public minutes?
Make
Oh.
a motion to unseal the non-public minutes for personnel from the Board of Public Works meeting of August 23rd.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion passes. Is there a motion to go into non-public session to discuss a litigation item?
We have personnel. We have to go
Okay.
into non-public for personnel
Oh,
first.
excuse me. Is there a motion to bring us into non-public for a personnel item?
I move by roll call that the board go into a non-public session pursuant to RSA 91A3 2B, the hiring of any person as a public employee.
And we need to
Mayor Donchess?
by roll call, right?
I did that last
Yeah,
time.
Yes, we do. Mayor Donchess,
Yes.
Commissioner Ackerman,
Yes.
Commissioner Pappas.
Yes.
Commissioner Moriarty.
Yes.
Commissioner Teese.
Yes.
All right, so we're
We're
now in
now in
non-public
non-public,
session.
so
Now, what do we
everybody
do?
has-
What do we do